The steam rises in columns, in pillars, in veils that shift and swirl with every breath of wind. In the early morning light, before the sun has fully cleared the mountains that ring this high plateau, the steam is everywhere, rising from the ground in hundreds of places, thousands perhaps, marking each thermal feature with its own signature of vapor. The air is cold, near freezing, and the contrast between the cold air and the hot water emerging from the earth creates this display, this landscape of mist and mystery that has drawn humans to this place for thousands of years and continues to hold us transfixed today. You stand on a boardwalk, a narrow path of wood and metal that keeps you safe from the scalding water and fragile mineral formations that surround you on all sides. The boardwalk is necessary here, a compromise between access and preservation, allowing visitors to experience this extraordinary landscape while protecting both the thermal features and the people who come to see them. Beneath your feet, you can feel the slight vibration, the tremor that is always present here, a reminder that this place is alive in a way that most landscapes are not, that deep beneath the surface, immense forces are at work. This is Yellowstone. Not the Yellowstone of bears and wolves, though they are here. Not the Yellowstone of canyons and waterfalls, though those too are part of this landscape. This is the Yellowstone of fire and water, of geothermal power expressed on a scale found almost nowhere else on Earth, a place where the planet's internal heat reaches the surface and creates wonders that defy easy description, that challenge our assumptions about what landscapes can be, what life can tolerate, what forces shape our world. The thermal features here are not scattered randomly, but are concentrated in several basins, areas where the geology conspires to bring hot water close to or all the way to the surface. The largest concentration is in the Upper Geyser Basin, home to Old Faithful and hundreds of other geysers, hot springs, and fumaroles. But there are thermal areas throughout the park, each with its own character, its own collection of features, its own contribution to the overall spectacle. Together, these thermal areas contain more than half of all the geysers on Earth and thousands of hot springs, making Yellowstone the premier geothermal region on the planet. The reason for this concentration of thermal features is profound and slightly terrifying. Yellowstone sits atop one of the largest active volcanic systems in the world, a supervolcano whose magma chamber lies just a few miles beneath the surface, close enough to heat the groundwater that percolates down from above, close enough to maintain the thermal features that define this landscape, close enough to remind us, if we pay attention, that the Earth is not stable, not static, not a finished creation, but a work in progress, still being shaped by forces that operate on timescales that dwarf human history. But that is a story we will explore later. For now, in this moment, as the sun begins to illuminate the steam and the cold air carries the smell of sulfur and minerals, we are here to witness two of Yellowstone's most extraordinary features, two faces of the geothermal power that shapes this place. One is a pool, a spring, the largest hot spring in the United States and the third largest in the world. A body of water so large and so intensely colored that it is visible from space, that has become one of the most photographed natural features on Earth. The other is a geyser, perhaps the most famous geyser in existence, a fountain that erupts with such regularity that it has been used to set watches, that has become synonymous with reliability in a landscape otherwise characterized by unpredictability. The Grand Prismatic Spring and Old Faithful. One is a rainbow pool, a still surface reflecting light and displaying colors that seem impossible, too vivid to be natural.
The other is a rhythm, a pulse, a heartbeat that has been beating for centuries and shows no sign of stopping. Together, they represent the dual nature of Yellowstone's thermal features, the visual spectacle and the temporal pattern, the beauty and the behavior, the art and the science. As you walk along the boardwalk toward the Grand Prismatic Spring, you begin to notice the details of this thermal landscape. The ground is white in places, coated with silica deposits called sinter or geyserite, minerals that precipitate from the hot water as it cools, gradually building up structures that can be inches or feet thick. These deposits are fragile, easily damaged by footsteps, which is why the boardwalks are essential. They preserve the formations while allowing access, maintaining the balance between use and protection that defines modern national park management. The water flowing across the sinter is clear, though often colored by minerals or by the organisms that live in it. The temperature of this water varies from near boiling at the source to merely hot a few feet away to warm at the margins, creating a gradient that is crucial to understanding why these features look the way they do. Life exists at different temperatures, different species adapted to different ranges, and the colors we see are often the colors of life, of bacteria and other microorganisms that thrive in conditions that would kill most organisms on Earth. You can hear the water, the gentle gurgling and flowing of thousands of gallons per minute emerging from the ground, spreading across the surface, cooling as it flows, eventually reaching stream channels that carry it away toward the larger rivers that drain this plateau. The sound is soothing, constant, a reminder that this is not a static display, but a dynamic system, always flowing, always changing, always sustained by the heat rising from below. And then you see it. The Grand Prismatic Spring opens before you, and despite all the photographs you may have seen, despite all the descriptions you may have read, the reality is overwhelming. The pool is enormous, more than 370 feet in diameter, larger than a football field. Deep enough that the center appears as a rich, dark blue, the color of deep ocean water, the color of water so pure and so deep that it absorbs all wavelengths of light except the shortest, the blues, which are scattered back to your eyes. But the center is only the beginning. Around that dark center, the colors change, shifting through the spectrum in concentric rings that follow the temperature gradient of the water as it flows outward from the hot center toward the cooler margins.
There is a band of green, then yellow, then orange, then red, each color distinct, each transition sharp. The effect is of a rainbow laid flat on the earth, a painter's palette of colors so intense and so varied that they seem artificial, as if someone has added dye to create this display. But the colors are entirely natural, entirely the product of biology and chemistry, of light and life, and the peculiar conditions that exist here and almost nowhere else. The steam rising from the spring partially obscures the view, adding a sense of mystery, of incompleteness, as if the spring is revealing itself gradually, allowing glimpses but never full disclosure. When the wind shifts, the steam clears for a moment, and you see the entire pool, the full spectrum of colors, the sheer size of it, and it takes your breath away. When the wind shifts again, the steam returns, and the pool becomes a suggestion, a hint of color through the mist. And you realize that this is part of the experience, that the steam is as much a part of the Grand Prismatic Spring as the colors themselves. This is what you have come to see, this pool that defies expectations, that challenges your sense of what is possible in nature. But to understand it, to truly appreciate it, you need to know more than what your eyes tell you. You need to understand the life that creates these colors, the geology that feeds this spring, the history of its discovery, and the science of its study. You need to understand how it fits into the larger story of Yellowstone, of the supervolcano beneath, of the forces that drive not just this spring, but the entire geothermal system that makes this park unique on Earth. The sun is higher now, the light changing, illuminating the colors with different intensity, creating different effects. Other visitors are arriving, walking along the boardwalk, stopping to photograph, to point, to exclaim. The Grand Prismatic Spring is not a secret, not a hidden treasure. It is one of the most visited features in Yellowstone, seen by millions, photographed from every angle, featured in countless documentaries and articles. And yet, it retains its power to amaze, to inspire wonder, to make people stop and stare and struggle to find words adequate to describe what they are seeing. This is the gift of Yellowstone, the reason it was protected as the world's first national park in 1872, the reason it continues to draw visitors from across the globe. This is a place where the Earth's power is visible, where processes that usually occur deep underground are exposed and accessible, where the boundary between the planet's cool surface and its hot interior becomes permeable. Here, you can see and feel and smell the Earth's inner workings, can witness forces that shaped the planet billions of years ago and continue to shape it today. As you continue walking, following the boardwalk as it curves around the Grand Prismatic Spring, you notice other thermal features, smaller pools and springs, each with its own characteristics. Some are clear blue, some milky white, some tinted green or yellow. Each is its own ecosystem, its own community of organisms adapted to the specific conditions of temperature, pH, and mineral content. The diversity is staggering, and it hints at something profound, that life is more adaptable than we often imagine, that given time and the right conditions, organisms can evolve to survive in environments that seem utterly hostile to life. The path leads away from the Grand Prismatic Spring, through areas where smaller features steam and bubble, where the ground is warm to the touch even through the boardwalk, where the smell of sulfur is strong enough to make your eyes water. This is not a gentle landscape, not a comfortable place. The temperatures are extreme, the chemistry is often toxic, the ground itself can give way without warning, revealing pools of boiling water just beneath the surface. Yellowstone is beautiful, yes, but it is also dangerous, a reminder that nature is not always benign, that beauty and hazard often coexist, that respect for the power of natural forces is essential for survival. Eventually, the boardwalk leads to a place where you can climb, ascending a hillside that provides an elevated perspective on the Grand Midway Geyser Basin, the thermal area that contains the Grand Prismatic Spring. From above, the full scale of the feature becomes apparent. You can see the entire pool, can trace the color bands with your eyes, can see how the hot water flows outward from the center, creating runoff channels that carry the minerals and the heat-loving bacteria downstream, gradually cooling, gradually changing color, until finally the water is cool enough that no thermophiles survive, and the color fades to the normal greens and browns of regular biological communities. From this vantage point, you can also see the other features of the basin, can see how they are arranged, how the boardwalk threads between them, how visitors appear as small figures moving through a landscape that seems alien, otherworldly, more like something from a science fiction film than from the natural earth. And you can see beyond the basin, to the forests that surround it, to the mountains in the distance, to the Firehole River that drains this thermal area and carries the hot water downstream, warming the river, creating conditions that support fish even in the coldest winter months. This is Yellowstone in context, not just isolated features, but an integrated landscape, a system where geology and biology and hydrology all interact, where the thermal features are not separate from the ecosystem, but are integral to it, shaping it, sustaining it, making it unique. To understand the Grand Prismatic Spring, you must understand this context, must see it not just as a beautiful pool, but as one component of a much larger, much more complex system. And to understand that system, you must eventually make your way to the Upper Geyser Basin,
to the place where Old Faithful erupts on its regular schedule, where the rhythm of the Earth's pulse is most clearly expressed, where the forces that power all of Yellowstone's thermal features are concentrated and displayed in a single spectacular fountain of water and steam. But that is still ahead. For now, you stand on the hillside, looking down at the Grand Prismatic Spring, watching the colors shift as clouds pass overhead and change the angle of the light, watching the steam rise and drift and dissipate, watching other visitors arrive and photograph and depart, each person having their own moment with this extraordinary feature, each person carrying away their own memories and images and sense of wonder. The morning is advancing. The cold is beginning to ease as the sun climbs higher and warms the air. The steam is less dramatic now, less visible against the warmer sky, but the colors remain, vivid and impossible, a rainbow in the earth. You turn from the overlook and begin to descend, to return to the boardwalk, to continue your journey through this landscape of fire and water, to seek out the other wonders that Yellowstone offers, to find the geyser that has become the symbol of this place, the heartbeat that has been beating for as long as anyone can remember, the rhythm that defines our experience of this extraordinary corner of the earth.
To truly understand the Grand Prismatic Spring, to comprehend how such intense and varied colors can exist in nature, you must look beyond the surface, must understand the biology that creates this rainbow, the invisible organisms that live in the water and give the pool its extraordinary appearance. The colors are not the result of minerals, though minerals are certainly present. The colors are the result of life, of bacteria and other microorganisms called thermophiles, organisms that not only survive in hot water, but thrive in it, that have evolved to live at temperatures that would denature the proteins and destroy the cellular structures of most life on Earth. The center of the Grand Prismatic Spring, where the water emerges from deep underground, is too hot even for thermophiles. The temperature there exceeds 189 degrees Fahrenheit, approaching the boiling point of water at Yellowstone's elevation of about 7,000 feet. At this temperature, even the most heat-adapted organisms cannot survive. The water is sterile, devoid of life, and it appears as deep blue because of the way water molecules absorb and scatter light. Pure water absorbs longer wavelengths, reds, oranges, yellows, and scatters shorter wavelengths, blues. In a deep pool of very pure water, the cumulative effect of this selective absorption and scattering is the rich blue color we see at the center of the Grand Prismatic Spring. As the water flows outward from the center, it cools. The rate of cooling depends on many factors: air temperature, wind, the speed of flow, the depth of the water, but gradually, inevitably, the temperature drops from the initial 189 degrees to temperatures that are survivable by specialized organisms. The first zone where life appears is still remarkably hot, typically around 165 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit. At these temperatures, a group of bacteria and archaea adapted to extreme heat begin to colonize the water. These organisms are called hyperthermophiles, meaning lovers of extreme heat, and they represent some of the most heat-tolerant life forms known to science. The hyperthermophiles living in the hottest waters of the Grand Prismatic Spring are often yellow-green in color, containing pigments that protect them from the intense sunlight and that also happen to give the water in which they live a characteristic yellow-green hue. These organisms are photosynthetic, using sunlight to produce energy, much like plants do, but operating at temperatures that would instantly kill any plant. They have evolved unique cellular structures and biochemistry that allow their proteins to remain functional at these extreme temperatures, that prevent their DNA from denaturing, that keep their cell membranes intact and permeable. As the water continues to cool, moving farther from the center, different species of thermophiles take over, each adapted to a specific temperature range.
This creates the banded appearance of the Grand Prismatic Spring, each color band corresponding to a different community of organisms thriving at a particular temperature. Around 160 degrees Fahrenheit, the dominant organisms shift and the color changes to yellow and orange. These organisms produce different pigments, carotenoids primarily, that give them their characteristic coloration. Carotenoids are the same pigments that make carrots orange and that provide the red and yellow colors of autumn leaves. In the thermophiles, these pigments serve multiple functions, protecting against radiation damage, helping to regulate temperature, and playing roles in the organism's metabolism. At cooler temperatures still, around 140 to 150 degrees Fahrenheit, the microbial community shifts again, and the dominant color becomes orange to red. The red color comes from yet different organisms, different pigments, different adaptations to the specific conditions of this temperature range. These organisms are still thermophiles, still requiring hot water to survive, but they are less extreme in their heat tolerance, occupying an intermediate zone between the hyperthermophiles of the hottest water and the more moderate thermophiles that live at the cooler margins. The outermost band of the Grand Prismatic Spring, where the water has cooled to around 130 degrees Fahrenheit or less, supports a different community again, one dominated by organisms that produce brown and green pigments. At these temperatures, which are still far too hot for most life, but are the coolest waters in the spring's outflow, the diversity of organisms increases slightly. There are more niches, more variation in conditions, and the microbial mats that form become more complex, containing multiple species interacting in ways that are still being studied and understood. This temperature gradient and the associated color gradient make the Grand Prismatic Spring a natural laboratory for studying extremophiles, organisms that live in extreme conditions. The spring provides a spatial representation of temperature preferences, allowing scientists to sample organisms from different temperature zones simply by moving to different locations around the pool. This has made the Grand Prismatic Spring and other Yellowstone thermal features invaluable for research into how life adapts to extreme heat, how organisms evolve in isolated environments, and what the limits of life might be. The discovery that life could exist at such high temperatures was relatively recent in scientific terms. For much of the 20th century, it was assumed that life could not survive above about 160 degrees Fahrenheit, that the biochemical machinery of cells would break down at higher temperatures. But in the 1960s and 1970s, research in Yellowstone and other geothermal areas revealed organisms living at much higher temperatures, pushing the known limits of life upward. Thomas Brock, a microbiologist working in Yellowstone in the 1960s, discovered Thermus aquicus, a bacterium living in hot springs at temperatures around 160 to 175 degrees Fahrenheit. This discovery was significant not just for what it revealed about the limits of life, but for its practical applications, which we will explore later.
The thermophiles of the Grand Prismatic Spring and other Yellowstone thermal features are not just scientific curiosities. They are fundamental to our understanding of life on Earth and potentially on other planets. These organisms are thought to be similar to some of the earliest life forms on Earth, which evolved when the planet was much hotter and lacked the oxygen-rich atmosphere we have today. By studying thermophiles, scientists gain insights into what early life might have been like, how it survived and evolved, what conditions are necessary for life to emerge and persist. Moreover, the discovery of thermophiles has implications for astrobiology, the study of life in the universe. If life can exist at temperatures near boiling, if it can thrive in conditions we once thought impossibly hostile, then the range of environments in the solar system and beyond that might support life expands considerably. Moons like Europa and Enceladus, which have subsurface oceans heated by tidal forces, become more plausible candidates for harboring life. Planets orbiting other stars, planets with conditions very different from Earth's, become more interesting as potential homes for life.
The thermophiles of Yellowstone teach us that life is adaptable, that it can exist in a wider range of conditions than we once imagined, that the universe might be more alive than we dared to hope. The pigments that give the Grand Prismatic Spring its colors are not merely cosmetic. They serve essential functions for the organisms that produce them. In the intense sunlight at Yellowstone's elevation, unprotected DNA and proteins would be damaged by ultraviolet radiation. The pigments absorb UV light, preventing it from reaching sensitive cellular structures. They also help regulate the amount of visible light that reaches the photosynthetic machinery in the organisms that use sunlight for energy. Too much light can be harmful, causing photooxidative damage. The pigments act as a kind of sunscreen, allowing enough light through for photosynthesis but blocking excess that would be damaging. The specific pigments produced by each organism depends on its genetic makeup, which has been shaped by millions of years of evolution in these thermal environments. The organisms living in the hottest water face different challenges than those in cooler water, and their pigments reflect these different adaptations. The result is the color gradient we observe, a visual representation of evolution and adaptation, of life responding to environmental conditions, of biology and chemistry and physics all interacting to create one of the most beautiful natural features on Earth. Walking along the boardwalk beside the Grand Prismatic Spring, you can observe these color bands directly, can see how sharp the transitions are between zones, how each band maintains its characteristic hue despite the constant flow of water. The edges of each zone are not perfectly defined. There is some mixing, some overlap, but the overall pattern is remarkably distinct. This reflects the fact that each organism has a fairly narrow temperature range in which it thrives, a window outside of which it cannot compete effectively with other species. The color bands are visual markers of these competitive boundaries, places where one species gives way to another, where one community yields to the next in the endless struggle for space and resources that drives all ecology. The microbial mats that form in the runoff channels from the Grand Prismatic Spring can be quite thick, sometimes several inches deep, layer upon layer of organisms living and dying, their remains accumulating, creating structures that are among the oldest forms of biological architecture on Earth. Similar structures, called stromatolites, were among the first fossils to form, dating back billions of years to a time when bacteria and archaea were the only life on Earth. The mats in Yellowstone's thermal features are modern analogs of these ancient structures, giving us a window into what life on the early Earth might have looked like, how it organized itself, how it interacted with its environment. Studying the Grand Prismatic Spring's microbial communities requires specialized techniques. The water is too hot to wade into, too chemically extreme to sample casually. Scientists use long-handled samplers to collect water and mat material from different temperature zones, working carefully to avoid contaminating samples or damaging the fragile structures. The samples are then analyzed in laboratories using a variety of techniques: microscopy to observe cell structure, genetic sequencing to identify species and understand their evolutionary relationships, chemical analysis to determine what pigments and other compounds the organisms produce, and biochemical studies to understand how their enzymes and other proteins function at high temperatures. This research has revealed extraordinary diversity in these hot spring communities. There are dozens, probably hundreds of species living in and around the Grand Prismatic Spring, most of them unknown to science until recently, many of them found nowhere else on Earth. Each species has its own adaptations, its own biochemical tricks for surviving in extreme heat, its own role in the community. Some are photosynthetic, producing their own food from sunlight and carbon dioxide. Others are chemosynthetic, deriving energy from chemical reactions involving minerals dissolved in the hot water. Still others are heterotrophs, feeding on the organic matter produced by the primary producers, forming simple food webs even in these extreme conditions.
The fact that complex communities can exist at such high temperatures that organisms can not only survive but form ecosystems with multiple interacting species is one of the most remarkable discoveries to emerge from research in Yellowstone. It shows that life is not merely tenacious but creative, able to exploit almost any environment that provides liquid water, an energy source, and the basic chemical building blocks required for cellular function. The Grand Prismatic Spring is not just a beautiful feature, not just a tourist attraction. It is a living laboratory, a place where some of the most fundamental questions about life are being explored and answered, a natural experiment in evolution and adaptation that has been running for thousands of years and continues to yield new insights.
To understand why the Grand Prismatic Spring exists at all, why hot water emerges from the earth here in such volume and with such force, you must look beneath the surface, must understand the plumbing system that feeds this feature and all of Yellowstone's thermal manifestations. The story begins miles underground, in the magma chamber that lies beneath the park, the heat source that makes everything above it possible. Yellowstone sits atop a hot spot, a place where a plume of hot material rises from deep within the Earth's mantle, pushing upward against the crust, creating a bulge, a thermal anomaly that has persisted for millions of years. This hotspot is not unique. Similar features exist under Hawaii, Iceland, and a few other locations around the globe, but Yellowstone's hotspot is located beneath thick continental crust rather than oceanic crust or a rift zone, and this makes it behave differently, makes it more explosive, more dangerous, more prone to catastrophic eruptions. The current magma chamber beneath Yellowstone is enormous, a body of partially molten rock perhaps 5 to 12 miles beneath the surface, extending for miles in every direction. Recent research using seismic imaging has revealed that the chamber is even larger than previously thought, containing enough magma that if it all erupted at once, it would qualify as one of the largest volcanic events in Earth's history. But the magma is not all liquid. Much of it is crystalline mush, rock that is hot enough to flow slowly, but not hot enough to erupt. Only a fraction, perhaps 5 to 15%, is actually molten at any given time. This magma chamber is the heat source for all of Yellowstone's thermal features. The rocks surrounding the chamber are heated to temperatures of several hundred degrees Celsius. Groundwater that percolates down from the surface through cracks and porous rock eventually encounters these hot rocks and is heated. Water is an excellent conductor of heat, and as it heats, it becomes less dense and begins to rise, following pathways back toward the surface, bringing with it dissolved minerals and the heat energy that it absorbed from the rocks below. The flows this heated water follows are complex and not fully understood. They involve fractures in the bedrock, zones of higher porosity where water can flow more easily, structural features created by faulting and deformation. Some pathways lead directly to the surface, creating hot springs and geysers. Others are blocked or restricted, creating underground reservoirs where heated water accumulates, building pressure until it finds a release. The Grand Prismatic Spring represents one type of pathway, a relatively unrestricted conduit that allows hot water to flow continuously to the surface, creating a large pool rather than an erupting geyser. The flow rate at the Grand Prismatic Spring is substantial, estimated at around 650 gallons per minute, or more than 800,000 gallons a day. This water carries with it dissolved silica, calcium carbonate, and other minerals that precipitate out as the water cools, creating the white sinter deposits that surround the pool and extend downstream along the runoff channels. Over time, these deposits build up, creating raised terraces, forming the framework that channels the water flow, creating the landscape we see today.
The sinter deposits are not just passive mineral accumulations. They are geologically active features, constantly growing, constantly being modified by the flowing water, by seasonal freezes, by occasional earthquakes that can fracture and realign them. The rate of sinter deposition varies depending on the silica content of the water, the temperature, the flow rate, and other factors. But in general, features in Yellowstone's thermal basins accumulate a fraction of an inch to an inch of sinter per year. Over centuries and millennia, this adds up to substantial structures, terraces and cones that can be several feet high, formations that completely alter the local topography. The age of the Grand Prismatic Spring as we see it today is difficult to determine precisely. The pool has certainly been present for centuries, probably for thousands of years, but it has not always looked exactly as it does now. The specific outlets, the exact size of the pool, the configuration of the runoff channels, all have changed over time as the hydrothermal system beneath has evolved, as earthquakes have altered fracture patterns, as the magma chamber has shifted slightly, as precipitation patterns have changed and affected the amount of water entering the system. Some thermal features in Yellowstone are ephemeral, lasting only years or decades before changing dramatically or disappearing entirely. Others have been stable for millennia. The Grand Prismatic Spring appears to be in the latter category, a relatively stable feature whose basic characteristics have persisted for a long time, though details certainly change. Historical photographs from the late 19th and early 20th centuries show the pool looking remarkably similar to how it appears today, though comparisons reveal subtle differences in the extent of the color bands, the configuration of the runoff channels, the amount of steam production. The stability of the Grand Prismatic Spring is somewhat unusual. Many hot springs and geysers in Yellowstone are quite variable, changing in temperature, flow rate, and appearance in response to factors that are not always well understood. Earthquakes can have dramatic effects, opening new fractures that divert water to different outlets, closing off old pathways, creating new features, or destroying existing ones. The 1959 Hebgen Lake earthquake, centered just outside Yellowstone, caused widespread changes to thermal features throughout the park, with some geysers becoming more active and others ceasing to erupt entirely. The Grand Prismatic Spring survived that earthquake and others without major changes, suggesting that its plumbing system is deep, well-established, and relatively isolated from the fractures that were affected by the seismic activity. But this does not mean the spring is unchanging or invulnerable. Future earthquakes, changes in precipitation patterns that affect groundwater levels, shifts in the magma chamber below, any of these could alter the spring, could change its appearance or behavior, could even shut it down entirely if the subsurface pathways were blocked. This uncertainty, this knowledge that what we see today might not exist tomorrow, adds a poignancy to the experience of visiting the Grand Prismatic Spring. We are witnessing something that has persisted for a long time by geological standards, but that is ultimately temporary, that could change or disappear, that exists only because the precise combination of geological conditions necessary to create and sustain it happen to be present right now. Appreciating this fragility, this contingency, changes how we see the spring, makes us more attentive, more grateful for the opportunity to witness it. The minerals dissolved in the spring's water tell their own story about what is happening deep underground. The high silica content, so high that the water is nearly saturated and begins to precipitate silica as soon as it cools slightly, indicates that the water has been in contact with rhyolitic rocks, volcanic rocks rich in silica that are characteristic of the magma chamber beneath Yellowstone. The presence of arsenic, fluoride, and other trace elements in measurable concentrations indicates that the water has reached temperatures high enough to leach these elements from the rocks, confirming that the source of heat is indeed the magma chamber and not just geothermal gradients from the Earth's normal temperature increase with depth. The chemistry of hot spring waters in Yellowstone varies somewhat from feature to feature, reflecting differences in the exact pathways the water follows, the rocks it contacts, the temperatures it reaches, the minerals it dissolves, but all share a common signature, a set of chemical characteristics that mark them as products of the same general hydrothermal system, fed by the same heat source, part of the same geological phenomenon. The Grand Prismatic Spring is not an isolated feature, but one node in a vast underground network of hot water circulation, a network that extends beneath the entire park and beyond.
Scientists monitor the chemistry of Yellowstone's thermal waters continuously, taking regular samples, analyzing them for changes that might indicate shifts in the hydrothermal system or in the magma chamber below. Increases in temperature, changes in gas content, shifts in the ratios of dissolved minerals all can provide early warning signs of changes in the volcanic system. So far, the monitoring has revealed mostly stability, with variations that fall within expected ranges, suggesting that the volcano is not building toward an imminent eruption. But the monitoring continues because the consequences of missing warning signs would be catastrophic, and because the hydrothermal system is dynamic, always changing, always capable of surprises. As you stand beside the Grand Prismatic Spring, you are standing above this vast underground system, above the fractured rock and heated water, above the magma chamber that powers it all. The spring is a window into the Earth's interior, a place where processes that usually occur hidden from view are exposed and accessible. The water you see, steaming and colored and flowing, has been miles underground, has been heated to temperatures that would scald you instantly, has dissolved minerals from rocks that were formed millions of years ago, has brought to the surface a sample of the deep Earth's chemistry and heat. Looking at the spring, you are looking at a piece of the planet's interior, brought to the surface by forces that have been operating for millions of years and will continue to operate for millions more.
The journey from the Grand Prismatic Spring to Old Faithful is not far, perhaps 2 miles by trail or boardwalk, a distance that can be walked in less than an hour at a leisurely pace. But it is a journey that takes you from one iconic feature to another, from the largest hot spring to the most famous geyser, from still water to erupting fountain, from one mode of geothermal expression to another that is fundamentally different in its behavior, though similar in its origin. Old Faithful sits in the Upper Geyser Basin, an area that contains the highest concentration of geysers in the world, more than 150 in just a few square miles. The basin is flat, the elevation barely changing as you walk across it, but the thermal features are everywhere, visible as plumes of steam rising from the ground, audible as hissing and rumbling, tangible as heat radiating from pools and vents. The boardwalk system here is extensive, allowing access to many features while protecting both the fragile sinter formations and the visitors who might otherwise venture too close to scalding water or unstable ground. As you approach Old Faithful, you see the crowds first. This is the most visited thermal feature in Yellowstone, the one that people plan their trips around, the one they want to see above all others. The reason is simple. Old Faithful is reliable. It erupts approximately every 90 minutes, give or take, and has been doing so for as long as records have been kept, which is more than 140 years. This predictability is extremely unusual for geysers, most of which are erratic, erupting on schedules that can vary from hours to days to weeks or not at all. Old Faithful's consistency has made it famous, has made it a symbol not just of Yellowstone, but of reliability itself. The geyser is named for this faithful behavior, named by members of the Washburn expedition in 1870, the first formal exploration of the Yellowstone region. The expedition members witnessed several eruptions, noted that they occurred at regular intervals, and recognized that this regularity was remarkable, worthy of commemoration. They named it Old Faithful, and the name has endured because the behavior has endured through all the years and all the visitors and all the changes that have occurred in the park around it. There is a visitor center near Old Faithful, and outside it, a prediction board displays the estimated time of the next eruption. Rangers update this prediction throughout the day based on the duration of the previous eruption and a formula that has been refined over decades of observation. If the previous eruption was short, less than 2.5 minutes, the interval to the next eruption will be shorter, typically around 65 minutes. If the previous eruption was long, more than 2.5 minutes, the interval will be longer, typically around 92 minutes. This relationship between eruption duration and the following interval is consistent enough that predictions are usually accurate to within 10 minutes, sometimes less. As the predicted time approaches, crowds gather. Benches arranged in a semicircle around the geyser filled with people, cameras ready, eyes fixed on the low mound of sinter from which the eruption will emerge. The mound is not particularly impressive when the geyser is not erupting, just a raised area of white and gray deposits with a vent opening at the top from which steam constantly rises. Water is visible in the vent, filling it, the surface occasionally rippling or splashing, hints of the pressure building below. And then it begins. The water in the vent starts to boil more vigorously, splashing higher, sending pulses of water and steam upward. These splashes grow stronger, more frequent, building toward the full eruption. The crowd leans forward, readies cameras, points. There is a collective holding of breath, an anticipation that is almost palpable. And then, suddenly, the geyser erupts, sending a column of water and steam skyward, a fountain that reaches 100, 120, sometimes 140 feet into the air, a white plume against the blue sky, powerful and sustained, continuing for several minutes, the water surging and falling back and surging again, the steam drifting with the wind, the sound like a sustained exhalation, like the earth breathing out all at once. The eruption continues for anywhere from 1.5 to 5 minutes, though most last around 3 minutes. The column of water is not steady, but pulsates, varying in height and intensity as pressure fluctuates underground. Sometimes it splits into multiple jets, sometimes it fans out, blown by wind. Always it is impressive. Always it draws applause and exclamations from the watching crowd. This is what they came for. This display of power, this demonstration that the earth beneath our feet is not dormant but active, not stable but dynamic, capable of spectacular outbursts that remind us of forces much larger than ourselves. When the eruption ends, it ends suddenly. The column collapses, the water falls back, the steam thins and disperses, and within moments the geyser is just a steaming mound again, water filling the vent, quiet returning. The crowd begins to disperse, people talking excitedly, sharing their experiences, their photographs, their videos. Some stay, waiting to see if there will be another splash or some minor activity, but most move on, satisfied, having witnessed what they came to see. But there is more to Old Faithful than the spectacle, more than the reliable eruption that draws the crowds. To understand the geyser, to appreciate what you are witnessing, you need to understand the mechanism, the underground plumbing and physics that create this regular rhythm, that sustain it year after year, decade after decade, with a consistency that is rare among geothermal features. The key to Old Faithful's behavior lies in its subsurface structure, in the configuration of chambers and channels through which water flows and in which pressure accumulates before being released in an eruption. The exact structure is not directly observable. We cannot drill into an active geyser without destroying it, but it has been inferred through indirect methods. Seismic monitoring that detects vibrations from water and steam moving underground, temperature measurements at various depths in nearby boreholes, mathematical modeling based on known physics and observed behavior. The current understanding is that Old Faithful has a reservoir chamber several hundred feet below the surface where hot water accumulates. This water is supplied from deeper in the hydrothermal system, water that has been heated by contact with hot rock near the magma chamber and that rises through fractures until it reaches this reservoir. The reservoir is not large, perhaps only a few cubic meters, but it is sufficient to hold the water needed for an eruption.
Above the reservoir, a narrow conduit connects to the surface, the channel through which the eruption occurs. This conduit is restrictive, narrow enough that water cannot flow freely from the reservoir to the surface, but must be forced upward by pressure. As hot water continues to enter the reservoir from below, the water level rises, the pressure increases, and some water begins to flow upward through the conduit, warming it, preparing it for the eruption. The water in the reservoir is superheated, meaning it is hotter than the boiling point at atmospheric pressure, but remains liquid because of the pressure exerted by the weight of water above it and the confining rock round it. At the depths of Old Faithful's reservoir, the boiling point is significantly higher than the 199 degrees it would be at the surface, possibly as high as 240 or 250 degrees Fahrenheit. The water is at or near this elevated boiling point, right at the edge of stability. As the reservoir fills and pressure increases, water begins to overflow from the vent at the surface, splashing and rippling. This overflow reduces the weight of water in the conduit, reduces the pressure at depth, and lowers the boiling point. When the boiling point drops below the temperature of the superheated water in the reservoir, the water begins to flash to steam, expanding violently. This expansion forces water and steam upward through the conduit, beginning the eruption.
Once started, the eruption is self-sustaining for several minutes. The flashing of water to steam at depth forces more water upward, which reduces pressure further, causing more water to flash, creating a positive feedback that continues until the reservoir is largely emptied. The duration of the eruption depends on how much water was in the reservoir, how hot it was, how efficiently it could be expelled through the conduit. Longer eruptions indicate that more water was expelled, which means the reservoir took longer to refill, which explains why longer eruptions are followed by longer intervals before the next eruption. After the eruption ends, the cycle begins again. Hot water from the deep hydrothermal system flows into the now empty reservoir, gradually refilling it, gradually increasing the pressure, gradually building toward the next eruption. The process is remarkably consistent because the geometry of the reservoir and conduit is stable, because the supply of hot water from below is steady, because the physics governing the boiling and expansion of water is unchanging. This consistency is what makes Old Faithful unique, what makes it predictable when so many other geysers are erratic. But Old Faithful is not perfectly consistent. The intervals between eruptions have been getting slightly longer over the decades, averaging around 90 minutes now compared to closer to 65 minutes in the late 19th century. The reasons for this gradual change are not entirely clear, but probably relate to subtle shifts in the subsurface structure, perhaps due to earthquakes that have slightly altered fracture patterns, perhaps due to changes in the amount of water entering the system, perhaps due to mineral deposition that has narrowed channels or partially blocked pathways. The geyser also responds to environmental factors. During periods of high water input from snowmelt or heavy rains, intervals can be shorter because the reservoir fills more quickly. During droughts, intervals can be longer. Seismic activity can cause temporary changes, though Old Faithful has proven remarkably resilient to earthquakes that have dramatically affected other geysers. The 1959 Hebgen Lake earthquake, for instance, caused changes to many geysers in Yellowstone, but Old Faithful's interval changed by only a few minutes, and the eruption height remained essentially unchanged. There is something profound about this reliability, about the fact that natural processes, which we often think of as unpredictable and chaotic, can produce patterns as regular as the ticking of a clock. Old Faithful is a reminder that nature operates according to laws, that physics and chemistry govern what happens, that cause and effect relationships exist even in complex systems like hydrothermal networks.
The geyser erupts every 90 minutes, not by choice or chance, but because the physical conditions necessary for eruption recur on that timescale, because the accumulation of water and pressure and heat takes approximately that long, because the system has found an equilibrium between input and output, between buildup and release. This equilibrium is delicate, though. Change any significant parameter, the supply of heat from below, the amount of groundwater entering the system, the configuration of underground channels, and the equilibrium shifts, and the behavior changes. Old Faithful has remained faithful because these parameters have remained relatively stable, but there is no guarantee they will continue to do so. Future changes to the hydrothermal system, future earthquakes, future shifts in precipitation patterns, all could affect the geyser, could change its interval, its eruption height, even its existence. What seems permanent and reliable on human timescales is transient and contingent on geological timescales. Standing before Old Faithful, watching the eruption, feeling the spray drift over you when the wind shifts, hearing the sustained roar of the column, you are witnessing one pulse in a sequence that has been continuing for at least hundreds of years and might continue for hundreds more. You are seeing the Earth's heat made visible, converted into kinetic energy, into motion and sound and mist. You are observing physics in action, the transformation of thermal energy to mechanical work, the operation of thermodynamics on a scale large enough to see and measure. And you are sharing this experience with hundreds of others, all gathered here for the same reason, all drawn by the promise of reliability, all wanting to witness this natural wonder. The social aspect of watching Old Faithful is part of the experience, the shared anticipation, the collective gasp when the eruption begins, the murmur of appreciation as it continues, the applause when it reaches peak height, all create a sense of communion, of being part of something larger than yourself, of connecting with strangers through a shared moment of wonder. This is what Yellowstone offers, what national parks in general offer, not just natural features to observe, but experiences to share, contexts in which to step outside our normal routines and concerns and connect with the natural world and with each other. Old Faithful draws crowds, yes, but those crowds are not a problem to be solved, but part of the point, part of the democratic ideal that these places should be accessible to everyone, that the wonders of nature should not be reserved for the privileged few, but should be available to all who wish to seek them out. The sun is lower now, afternoon advancing toward evening. Shadows are lengthening across the Upper Geyser Basin, the light taking on the warm quality that makes photographs especially beautiful. Another eruption is predicted in about 40 minutes. Some visitors settle in to wait, claiming seats on the benches, pulling out snacks, chatting with neighbors. Others continue exploring, walking the boardwalk that loops through the basin, visiting the other geysers and hot springs, each with its own character, its own behavior, its own contribution to this extraordinary landscape. You join those who walk, who continue exploring, because there is much more to see here, much more to understand about how geysers work, and why they are rare, and what makes this particular valley so concentrated with them. The Upper Geyser Basin is not just Old Faithful, but an entire community of thermal features, a geothermal wonderland that offers insights into Earth processes, into microbial ecology, into the history of exploration and conservation. To understand Yellowstone fully, you must see it all, must spend time with multiple features, must allow the patterns to emerge, must let the place teach you about time and heat and water and the forces that shape our planet.
Understanding how geysers work requires understanding some fundamental physics, some properties of water that we take for granted, but that become crucial when water is heated to extreme temperatures and confined under pressure. Water is an unusual substance with properties that make it essential for life and that also make geysers possible. It has a high specific heat capacity, meaning it can absorb large amounts of energy without changing temperature dramatically. It has a high heat of vaporization, meaning converting it from liquid to gas requires substantial energy input, and its boiling point changes with pressure in predictable ways that create the conditions necessary for geyser eruptions. Under normal atmospheric pressure at sea level, water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees Celsius. This is the temperature at which water molecules have enough energy to break free from the liquid phase and become gas, steam. But this boiling point is not fixed, it varies with pressure. At higher pressures, the boiling point increases because more energy is needed for molecules to escape the liquid phase. At lower pressures, the boiling point decreases. This relationship between pressure and boiling point is what makes pressure cookers work, allowing food to cook at higher temperatures than would be possible in an open pot. And it is also what makes geysers work. In Yellowstone, which sits at elevations between 5,000 and 11,000 feet above sea level, atmospheric pressure is lower than at sea level, and consequently, water boils at lower temperatures, around 199 degrees Fahrenheit at typical geyser basin elevations. But this is just the boiling point at atmospheric pressure, at the surface. Underground, where water is confined in rock fractures and chambers, the pressure is much higher, increased by the weight of water and rock above. At depths of several hundred feet, the pressure can be many times atmospheric pressure, and the boiling point can be elevated to 250, 300, or even 400 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on the exact depth and configuration of the hydrothermal system. For a geyser to form, you need several specific conditions. First, you need an abundant supply of water. This comes from precipitation, snow and rain that falls on the surface and percolates down through porous rock and fractures. Yellowstone receives significant precipitation, especially in winter when heavy snowfall accumulates. The snowmelt in spring and early summer recharges the groundwater system, providing the water that will eventually emerge at hot springs and geysers. Second, you need a heat source. In Yellowstone, this is the magma chamber beneath the park, rocks heated to temperatures of several hundred to more than 1,000 degrees Celsius. These hot rocks transfer heat to any water that comes in contact with them or that flows through rock that has been heated by proximity to the magma. The water is heated to temperatures well above the surface boiling point, but remains liquid because of the elevated pressure at depth. Third, you need a specific type of plumbing system, a configuration of underground channels and chambers that allows water to accumulate, that restricts flow enough to build pressure, but that also has an outlet to the surface. This plumbing must be relatively seal-tight, not leaking too much water or pressure, allowing the system to build up the conditions necessary for an eruption. And it must be strong enough structurally to withstand the pressures involved without collapsing or deforming in ways that would prevent eruptions. These conditions are quite specific, which is why geysers are rare. They require not just volcanic heat and water, but a precise combination of geological circumstances that occur in only a few places on Earth. Yellowstone has about half of the world's geysers. The other significant geyser fields are in Iceland, New Zealand, Chile, and Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula. A few geysers exist in other locations, but these 5 regions account for the vast majority. And even within these regions, geysers are not uniformly distributed, but are concentrated in specific valleys and basins where the geological conditions happen to be right. The mechanism of a geyser eruption is elegant in its physics. Hot water accumulates in a reservoir at depth, heated to temperatures above the surface boiling point, but remaining liquid because of pressure. As more hot water enters from below and the reservoir fills, some water begins to overflow from the vent at the surface. This overflow reduces the weight of water in the conduit connecting the reservoir to the surface, which reduces the pressure at the top of the reservoir.
With reduced pressure, the boiling point drops. If the boiling point drops below the temperature of the water in the reservoir, the water begins to boil, flashing to steam. Steam occupies much more volume than liquid water, about 1,700 times at atmospheric pressure, so this conversion creates a dramatic expansion. The expanding steam forces water above it upward through the conduit and out the surface vent, beginning the eruption. The ejection of this water further reduces pressure in the reservoir, causing more water to flash to steam, which forces more water upward, creating a self-reinforcing cycle until the reservoir is largely emptied of water. After the eruption, the reservoir is essentially empty and the cycle begins again. Hot water from the deep hydrothermal system flows into the reservoir, gradually refilling it. The rate of refilling depends on the rate of water input from below and the size of the reservoir. For Old Faithful, with its 90-minute average interval, the refilling takes about that long. For other geysers, the interval can be much shorter or much longer, depending on their specific plumbing configuration and water supply. Not all geysers behave like Old Faithful, with regular intervals and cone-type eruptions from a single vent. Fountain geysers erupt from pools, sending water and steam in all directions rather than in a single column. Some geysers erupt continuously for minutes or hours and then go dormant for days or weeks. Some are linked, with one geyser's eruption affecting the behavior of nearby geysers through shared underground connections. The variety of geyser behaviors reflects the variety of underground plumbing configurations, each creating its own pattern of pressure buildup and release. Temperature plays a crucial role in determining geyser behavior. If the water entering the reservoir is too cool, it will not flash to steam readily, and eruptions will be weak or may not occur at all. If the water is too hot and already boiling before entering the reservoir, it will vent continuously as a hot spring rather than accumulating and erupting periodically. Geysers require water that is hot enough to flash to steam when pressure is released, but not so hot that it's already boiling at the prevailing pressure. This is a narrow window, and it helps explain why geysers are so sensitive to changes in their underground systems. The mineral content of the water matters as well. The silica dissolved in Yellowstone's hot waters precipitates as the water cools, forming sinter deposits that line the underground channels and the surface vents. Over time, these deposits can narrow channels, alter flow patterns, affect pressure distribution. In some cases, mineral deposition can completely seal off a geyser, causing it to cease erupting. In other cases, it can create new channels or modify existing ones in ways that change eruption behavior. The ongoing deposition of minerals means that geyser plumbing systems are not static but are constantly evolving, constantly being modified by the very water that flows through them.
Seismic activity is another major factor affecting geysers. Earthquakes can fracture rock, opening new pathways for water flow or closing existing ones. A moderate earthquake can cause dramatic changes to multiple geysers, with some becoming more active, some less active, some changing their eruption patterns entirely. The 1959 Hebgen Lake earthquake, magnitude 7.3, centered just west of Yellowstone, caused widespread changes throughout the park's thermal areas. New geysers began erupting, some that had been dormant for years. Others that had been regular became erratic or stopped entirely. Old Faithful, as mentioned, was relatively unaffected, but many other geysers experienced significant changes that persisted for months or years. More recent earthquakes have also caused changes, though generally less dramatic than the 1959 event. The park experiences hundreds of small earthquakes each year, most too small to feel, but detectable by seismographs. Larger earthquakes, magnitude 3 or 4, occur less frequently, but can affect thermal features, especially those with more fragile or complex plumbing systems. Scientists monitor seismic activity closely, not just to track the volcanic system, but also to understand how earthquakes affect hydrothermal features, to learn more about the underground connections between features, to predict what changes might occur after future earthquakes. The study of geysers has practical applications beyond understanding Yellowstone. Geothermal energy, the extraction of Earth's internal heat for power generation and heating, relies on principles similar to those that drive geysers. Understanding how water circulates through fractured rock, how heat is transferred from hot rocks to water, how mineral deposition affects flow, all are relevant to designing and operating geothermal energy systems. Iceland and New Zealand, both countries with significant geyser fields, are also leaders in geothermal energy development, using their natural hot water systems to generate electricity and provide heating for homes and businesses. There are risks to geothermal development, however. Extracting large amounts of hot water or steam from the ground can depressurize underground reservoirs, potentially affecting nearby natural thermal features. In New Zealand, geothermal power development near Rotorua has been linked to the decline or cessation of some geysers, a loss of natural heritage that has led to restrictions on further development. Yellowstone is protected from such development by its status as a national park, but the experience elsewhere demonstrates that geothermal resources, while renewable in principle, must be managed carefully to avoid degrading the very features that make them valuable. The complexity of geyser systems is also being explored through mathematical modeling. Encoding the physics of heat transfer, fluid flow, and phase changes into computer simulations, researchers can test theories about how specific plumbing configurations produce specific eruption behaviors. These models can predict how changes to parameters, increased water input, elevated temperatures, altered channel geometry, would affect eruption intervals and heights. While simplified compared to the real complexity of natural systems, these models provide insights that would be difficult or impossible to gain through field observation alone. Walking through the Upper Geyser Basin, you encounter this variety of geyser behaviors directly. Castle Geyser, with its large cone built up over perhaps 10,000 to 15,000 years of eruptions, erupts roughly every 13 to 14 hours. Its eruptions lasting about 20 minutes of water phase, followed by 30 to 40 minutes of steam phase. Beehive Geyser, named for its distinctive cone, erupts infrequently and irregularly, sometimes days between eruptions, but when it does erupt, it sends water up to 200 feet high, making it one of the tallest geysers in the park. Grand Geyser, considered by many to be the world's tallest predictable geyser, erupts every 7 to 15 hours, its eruptions reaching heights of 200 feet or more. Riverside Geyser erupts on a remarkably regular schedule, every 5.5 to 7 hours, arcing gracefully over the Firehole River. Each of these geysers has its own personality, its own rhythm, its own characteristics that reflect its unique underground structure. Some geysers are connected to each other through underground channels, creating groups where the activity of one affects the others. The Giant Group, which includes Giant Geyser and several associated features, demonstrates this connectivity. When one feature in the group is active, others may be suppressed or show altered behavior. These connections provide natural experiments in how geysers interact, how underground systems link features that may be separated by hundreds of feet at the surface, but are connected by fractures and channels underground. The predictability of certain geysers, like Old Faithful and Riverside, make them valuable for public education and enjoyment. Rangers can inform visitors when eruptions are expected, allowing people to plan their time, to be present for the spectacle. But the unpredictability of most geysers is also part of their charm, part of what makes Yellowstone's thermal features so dynamic and engaging. You might walk past a geyser that is steaming quietly, and return an hour later to find it in full eruption. You might wait hours for an infrequent geyser, only to miss it by minutes. This element of chance, of natural variability, reminds us that we are not in control, that nature operates on its own schedule, that patience and persistence are sometimes rewarded and sometimes not. The science of predicting geyser eruptions is part observation, part statistics, part physics.
For geysers like Old Faithful that show clear relationships between eruption duration and subsequent interval, predictions are quite accurate. For others, rangers track average intervals, patterns of precursor activity, and other indicators to make educated guesses about when eruptions might occur. These predictions are posted in the visitor center and are remarkably useful for visitors trying to see specific geysers. But they are always probabilistic, always subject to the inherent variability of natural systems, always acknowledging that geysers, despite their patterns, remain fundamentally wild, untamed, operating according to their own deep rhythms. As the afternoon wears on and you continue your exploration of the Upper Geyser Basin, you develop a feel for the place, an intuition about its rhythms. You learn to read the signs, the amount of steam, the intensity of sound, the behavior of water in a vent or pool that indicate whether a geyser is building towards eruption or has recently erupted and is in its quiet phase. You begin to understand why people return here year after year, why some become geyser gazers, dedicated observers who track eruptions, who camp in the basin for days at a time, who maintain detailed records that contribute to the scientific understanding of these features. There is something meditative about watching geysers, about sitting on a bench waiting for an eruption that may or may not occur on schedule, about being present in this landscape where time moves to different rhythms, where patience is not a virtue but a necessity. The geysers teach you to slow down, to observe, to be attentive to subtle changes, to appreciate the moments of quiet as much as the moments of spectacular release. They teach you about cycles, about patterns, about the difference between predictable and random, about how complex systems can produce behaviors that appear regular but emerge from the interaction of many variables, any of which might change and alter the overall pattern.
Beneath everything you see at Yellowstone, beneath the hot springs and geysers and fumaroles and mud pots, beneath the beautiful and sometimes bizarre thermal features that draw millions of visitors each year, lies something both extraordinary and slightly terrifying, one of the largest active volcanic systems on Earth. Yellowstone is not just a collection of thermal features, it is a supervolcano, a volcanic system so large that it defies easy comprehension, that operates on scales of time and energy that make even major volcanic eruptions like Mount St. Helens seem modest by comparison. The term supervolcano is not a formal scientific classification, but rather a designation for volcanic systems capable of producing eruptions of magnitude 8 on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, eruptions that expel more than 240 cubic miles of material. Such eruptions are extraordinarily rare in human history. The last one occurred 74,000 years ago at Toba in Indonesia. But the geological record shows they have occurred repeatedly throughout Earth's history, and Yellowstone is one of the few places on Earth where conditions exist for another such eruption to occur. Yellowstone has experienced 3 supereruptions in its history, one 2.1 million years ago, one 1.3 million years ago, and one 640,000 years ago. Each of these eruptions was catastrophic, ejecting hundreds of cubic miles of ash and rock into the atmosphere, burying vast areas of the western United States under ash deposits that in some places were tens of feet thick, affecting climate globally by reducing sunlight reaching Earth's surface, causing what geologists call volcanic winter that could last for years. The most recent eruption, 640,000 years ago, created the current Yellowstone caldera, a depression roughly 30 by 45 miles that encompasses much of the central portion of the park. A caldera forms when a volcanic eruption empties a magma chamber beneath the surface and the overlying rock collapses into the void, creating a large depression. The Yellowstone caldera is not a simple circular feature, but rather an elongated basin, now partially filled by sediments and volcanic rocks from smaller eruptions that have occurred since the caldera formed. Most visitors to Yellowstone are unaware they are inside a volcanic caldera. The landscape does not look like a typical volcano. There's no prominent cone, no obvious crater. Instead, the park is a high plateau surrounded by mountains with rivers and forests and meadows that seem entirely normal except for the thermal features. But subtle clues reveal the volcanic nature of the place. The elevation is slightly higher inside the caldera than might be expected, reflecting ongoing uplift from the magma chamber below. The rocks are largely volcanic, rhyolites and basalts, evidence of past eruptions, and of course, the thermal features themselves, powered by heat from the magma chamber, are perhaps the most obvious indication that this is an active volcanic system. The magma chamber beneath Yellowstone is vast. Seismic imaging, which uses earthquakes and their reflected and refracted waves to create a kind of underground ultrasound image, has revealed two magma bodies. The upper one, closest to the surface, sits about 3 to 9 miles below ground and contains perhaps 5 to 15% molten rock, the rest being crystalline mush. The lower magma body is deeper, perhaps 20 to 50 miles down, and appears to be the source of the heat and magma that feeds the upper chamber. Together, these bodies contain an enormous amount of thermal energy and partially molten rock. Understanding the size and state of the magma chamber is crucial for assessing volcanic hazard. If a large portion of the chamber were liquid, and if conditions changed in ways that increased pressure or decreased the strength of the overlying rock, an eruption could occur. But current monitoring shows that the magma is mostly solid, that only a small fraction is molten at any given time. This suggests that an imminent supereruption is unlikely. The system would need to undergo significant changes, a large influx of fresh, hot magma from below, for instance, to create conditions that could trigger a major eruption. Yellowstone is extensively monitored, with networks of seismometers detecting earthquakes, GPS stations measuring ground deformation, gas sensors analyzing emissions from thermal features, and satellite measurements tracking subtle changes in elevation and thermal output. This monitoring is coordinated by the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, a partnership between the U.S. Geological Survey, the University of Utah, and the National Park Service. The data from this monitoring are analyzed continuously, looking for any signs that the volcanic system is changing in ways that might indicate increased hazard. What would precede a major eruption? Scientists expect there would be clear warning signs, probably for years or decades before the eruption itself. These might include dramatic increases in earthquake activity, significant ground deformation as magma moved beneath the surface, changes in the behavior of thermal features as the hydrothermal system responded to new heat and gas input, and changes in gas emissions, particularly increases in sulfur dioxide and other gases associated with rising magma. None of these signs are currently present at levels that indicate an eruption is brewing. The system is active, yes, but in the normal way, not in a way that suggests imminent catastrophe. The probability of a Yellowstone supereruption in any given year is estimated at about 1 in 730,000, based on the average recurrence interval of about 700,000 years between Yellowstone's 3 supereruptions. This is not a precise calculation. Volcanic systems do not operate on perfectly regular schedules, but it provides a rough sense of the risk. More likely than a supereruption are smaller eruptions, lava flows similar to those that have occurred within the caldera since the last supereruption, or hydrothermal explosions caused by rapid conversion of hot water to steam, creating localized craters. A significant hydrothermal explosion occurred in July 2024 near Biscuit Basin, creating a crater and throwing rocks and debris, a reminder that even without volcanic eruptions, Yellowstone's thermal system is dynamic and capable of sudden, violent events. The effects of a Yellowstone supereruption, should one occur, would be devastating regionally and significant globally. Ashfall would bury areas downwind, potentially covering much of the western United States under inches to feet of ash, making agriculture impossible, collapsing roofs, contaminating water supplies, disrupting transportation and communication. The ejection of volcanic aerosols into the stratosphere would reduce global temperatures, affecting climate and growing seasons worldwide. The economic and social disruptions would be immense, affecting billions of people, even in regions far from Yellowstone. But it is important to keep this risk in perspective. The probability of such an eruption in our lifetimes or in the lifetimes of many future generations is very low. Other volcanic hazards, eruptions at more frequently active volcanoes like Mount Rainier or Vesuvius, are much more likely and deserve attention and preparedness. The purpose of monitoring Yellowstone is not to create alarm, but to ensure that if conditions do change, if the volcano does begin to show signs of increased activity, there will be adequate warning to take protective measures, to evacuate if necessary, to prepare for whatever comes. Living with a supervolcano requires a certain philosophical acceptance of risk, an acknowledgement that the Earth is a dynamic planet, that volcanic activity is part of how the planet works, that the same processes that create beautiful hot springs and geysers are also capable of catastrophic destruction. Yellowstone embodies this duality. It is a place of extraordinary beauty and wonder, a place that brings joy to millions of visitors each year, and it is also a place of potential hazard, a reminder that we live on a planet that is still geologically active, still capable of sudden and dramatic changes. The heat from the magma chamber, while it poses a potential volcanic hazard, is also what makes Yellowstone's thermal features possible. It is this heat that creates the hot water, that powers the geysers and hot springs, that creates the thermophiles and creates the colors of the Grand Prismatic Spring. In a very real sense, Yellowstone's beauty and its danger are inseparable, two aspects of the same geological phenomenon. Appreciating the beauty requires accepting the danger, understanding that these features exist only because of the enormous heat source beneath them, a heat source that is part of a volcanic system that could, under the right circumstances, produce an eruption of global consequence. But for now, the supervolcano sleeps, not dormant, but not actively preparing to erupt either, existing in a state of equilibrium where the heat generated by radioactive decay and residual primordial heat is balanced by the heat lost through thermal features and conduction to the surface. The magma chamber crystallizes and partially melts in cycles that may last thousands or tens of thousands of years, with fresh magma injected from below, occasionally remelting older crystallized material, maintaining the system but not currently pushing it toward eruption. The geothermal features you see at the surface are the visible expression of this deep process. The hot water circulating through the hydrothermal system is carrying heat from the magma chamber toward the surface, cooling the magma slowly, releasing pressure gradually. In this way, the thermal features may actually reduce the risk of eruption by providing a release valve for heat and pressure that might otherwise accumulate to dangerous levels. This is speculative. The relationship between hydrothermal heat loss and volcanic activity is complex and not fully understood, but it suggests that Yellowstone's hot springs and geysers are not just tourist attractions, but are playing a role in the overall dynamics of the volcanic system, possibly helping to maintain stability. As you stand at Old Faithful or beside the Grand Prismatic Spring, you are standing above this vast underground system, above the magma chamber and the fractured rock and the circulating hot water. The features you see are the tips of a much larger phenomenon, surface expressions of processes occurring at depth, windows into the Earth's interior. This perspective changes how you see these features, adds a dimension of appreciation that goes beyond the visual beauty or the fascinating behavior, connects you to the deep processes that shape the planet, reminds you that the ground beneath your feet is not a static stage, but an active participant in an ongoing geological drama that has been playing out for millions of years and will continue for millions more. The thermal features of Yellowstone do more than provide visual spectacle and scientific interest. They support life in ways that would be impossible without the geothermal heat, creating ecosystems that function differently from those in colder regions, allowing survival in conditions that would otherwise be lethal during the harsh Yellowstone winters. The greater Yellowstone ecosystem, which encompasses the national park and surrounding public lands, experiences some of the most extreme winter conditions in the lower 48 states, with temperatures regularly dropping below 0 Fahrenheit, snowfall measured in feet, and wind chills that can be life-threatening. In such conditions, the thermal areas become refuges, islands of warmth and open water in a landscape otherwise locked in ice and snow. Bison, those massive symbols of the American West, are perhaps the most visible beneficiaries of Yellowstone's thermal features. During winter, when snow covers the ground to depths that make travel difficult and foraging nearly impossible, bison congregate around thermal areas where the heat keeps snow from accumulating, where vegetation remains accessible, where the ground is warm enough to rest on without losing precious body heat. The Firehole River, fed by hot water from numerous thermal features, remains ice-free even in the coldest months, providing water when other sources are frozen solid. Watching bison in winter, standing in the steam rising from a hot spring, their massive forms ghostly in the mist, their breath adding to the vapor, you see the direct connection between geology and biology, between the heat from the magma chamber miles below and the survival of these animals at the surface. Without the thermal features, Yellowstone's bison population would be smaller, forced to migrate to lower elevations or to spend energy breaking through deeper snow to reach buried grass. The geothermal heat reduces this energy cost, allows larger populations to survive, creates conditions where these animals can persist through the hardest months. Elk, too, use thermal areas in winter, though they are less dependent on them than bison. Elk are more mobile, more willing to migrate to lower elevations where snow is less deep, but some populations remain in the park year-round, and these animals take advantage of the warmth and accessible forage around hot springs and along thermally heated streams. Other ungulates, mule deer, pronghorn, bighorn sheep, occasionally use thermal areas, though their winter strategies vary, with some migrating and others relying on south-facing slopes where snow melts more quickly in the sun. Birds, particularly waterfowl, benefit enormously from Yellowstone's thermal features. The Firehole and other thermally influenced rivers provide open water habitat throughout winter, allowing ducks, geese, and swans to remain in the park when other water bodies are frozen solid. Trumpeter swans, North America's largest waterfowl, nest on the Yellowstone Plateau and depend on thermally influenced waters for winter survival. The population of trumpeter swans in the greater Yellowstone area has recovered from near extinction in part because of the reliable open water that thermal features provide. Smaller animals also benefit. Terrestrial mammals like coyotes and foxes hunt more successfully around thermal areas where prey is concentrated. Ravens and other scavenging birds congregate around carcasses that appear in winter, animals that died from cold or predation or age, taking advantage of the concentration of resources. Even insects, which generally become dormant or die during winter, show surprising activity around thermal features where temperatures remain above freezing. Midges and other small insects hover over warm streams, providing food for birds that would otherwise struggle to find prey in winter. The vegetation around thermal features is also distinctive. The heat and moisture create microclimates where plants can grow that would not survive in the surrounding colder, drier conditions. Grasses remain green through much of the year near hot springs, providing forage when other areas are covered in snow or dried out. Certain wildflowers bloom earlier in spring around thermal features, taking advantage of the warmer temperatures. Trees grow closer to hot springs than they would elsewhere, though most thermal areas are too hot or too mineral-rich for trees to establish directly adjacent to the water. Some plants have adapted to the edges of thermal features, tolerating higher temperatures and unusual chemistry that would kill most species. These thermally adapted plants are not as extreme as the thermophilic microorganisms living in the hot water itself, but they occupy a niche between the normal vegetation of the forest and meadow and the true extremophiles of the hottest waters. They represent an intermediate level of adaptation, able to tolerate warmth but not extreme heat, benefiting from the geothermal energy but still requiring roots in soil and photosynthesis for survival. The aquatic ecosystems in and around thermal features are unique. The Firehole River, for example, supports populations of brown trout and rainbow trout, fish that thrive in the warm water, warmer than typical trout streams, that results from the input of hot spring water.
The warmth allows the fish to be active year-round, feeding and growing even in winter when fish in colder streams are dormant or barely active. This extended growing season creates larger fish and higher biomass, making the firehole a popular destination for fly fishing, despite the challenges posed by fishing near thermal features. However, the thermal influence on aquatic ecosystems is not always beneficial. Water temperatures that are slightly elevated can be advantageous, but if they become too high, they can stress or kill fish. The balance is delicate, and changes to the hydrothermal system, an increase in hot water input, for instance, can tip a stream from productive to inhabitable. Similarly, the dissolved minerals in thermally influenced waters can be toxic at high concentrations. The chemistry of each stream is different depending on which thermal features feed it, and aquatic organisms have adapted to specific conditions, making them vulnerable to changes. The microbial life in and around thermal features is, as we have discussed, extraordinary. But these microorganisms do not exist in isolation. They form the base of food webs, producing organic matter through photosynthesis or chemosynthesis that is then consumed by other organisms. Insect larvae graze on microbial mats in some thermal streams. These larvae are in turn eaten by fish or birds, transferring energy from the thermophiles up the food chain. In this way, the heat from the magma chamber, converted to chemical energy by thermophiles, eventually powers the metabolism of animals that could not themselves tolerate the hot water. The importance of thermal features to Yellowstone's ecosystem extends beyond providing warmth and open water in winter. They create diversity, creating patches of different conditions that support different species, increasing the overall biodiversity of the region. A landscape with thermal features is more heterogeneous, more varied than one without, and this heterogeneity supports a greater variety of life. From thermophiles to bison, from aquatic insects to trumpeter swans, the thermal features are integrated into the ecosystem, shaping it, sustaining it, making it uniquely Yellowstone. The dependence of wildlife on thermal features raises conservation questions. If the hydrothermal system were to change, if a major earthquake were to alter water flow, if climate change were to reduce precipitation and thus groundwater recharge, if volcanic activity were to increase or decrease heat output, the effects would ripple through the ecosystem. Species that depend on thermal features could face population declines or local extinctions. The ecosystem's resilience would be tested, its ability to adapt to new conditions challenged. Protecting Yellowstone's thermal features is thus not just about preserving geological curiosities or tourist attractions. It's about maintaining functioning ecosystems, about ensuring that the interconnections between geology and biology continue to operate, about recognizing that conservation is not just about protecting individual species, but about protecting the processes and conditions that allow those species to persist. The thermal features are part of the ecosystem's infrastructure, as essential as the forests and rivers and grasslands, and they deserve the same level of protection and management attention. As you watch bison grazing near a hot spring, or as you see ducks paddling on a thermally warmed pond in January, you are witnessing the ecological importance of Yellowstone's geothermal features. These are not isolated phenomena, not just interesting geology separate from the biology around them. They are integrated, interconnected, part of a system where rock and water and heat and life all interact, where understanding any one component requires understanding them all, where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This is the lesson of Yellowstone, that nature is complex, that connections exist between seemingly unrelated phenomena, that protecting wildness means protecting not just the charismatic animals, but the geological processes that make their survival possible.
The Upper Geyser Basin, where Old Faithful erupts, is not an isolated thermal area, but part of a continuum, one node in a network of geothermal features that extends across much of Yellowstone. But within this basin, the concentration of thermal features is extraordinary, making it arguably the most spectacular geothermal landscape accessible anywhere on Earth. Within just a few square miles, more than 150 geysers are found, along with countless hot springs, fumaroles, and other thermal manifestations. The density is such that you can stand in one spot and see steam rising from dozens of features in all directions, can walk for hours on boardwalks that thread between pools and vents and cones, each one different, each one offering something unique. Castle Geyser, one of the first geysers you encounter when walking from Old Faithful toward Morning Glory Pool, has one of the largest cones in the park, a massive structure of sinter that has been building for thousands of years. The cone is roughly 12 feet tall, shaped somewhat like a ruined castle turret, hence the name. Castle erupts roughly every 13 to 14 hours, its eruptions lasting about 20 minutes of water phase, followed by a much longer steam phase that can continue for 30 to 40 minutes. The eruptions are not as tall as Old Faithful, typically 60 to 90 feet, but they are powerful, the water surging from the cone with force, the steam phase particularly impressive, the geyser venting high-pressure steam with a roar that can be heard across the basin. The age of Castle Geyser's cone has been estimated at between 5,000 and 15,000 years, making it one of the oldest thermal features in the park. The uncertainty in age reflects the difficulty of dating sinter formations, but the cone's size and the rate of silica deposition observed in modern times both suggest an age of many thousands of years. This means that Castle Geyser was erupting when the climate was different, when bison were just beginning to recolonize Yellowstone after the Ice Age, when the first humans were moving through this landscape. The geyser has been a constant in a landscape that has changed dramatically around it, a fixed point in a fluid world. Grand Geyser, farther along the trail, is considered the tallest predictable geyser in the world, its eruptions reaching heights of 200 feet or more, sometimes as high as 220 feet. Grand erupts every 7 to 15 hours, the interval variable, but falling within this range with enough consistency that rangers can make reasonable predictions. The eruptions last about 12 minutes, with multiple bursts, each burst sending water skyward in a massive column that dwarfs nearby observers. Watching Grand erupt is an overwhelming experience. The sheer volume of water, the height of the column, the power evident in every surge, making it clear why people consider this the king of geysers, the ultimate expression of geothermal power. Grand is part of a group of interconnected geysers, including turbine, vent, and others, that show complex interactions. Turbine erupts more frequently, roughly every 17 to 20 minutes, and its activity affects Grand's behavior. When Grand erupts, the associated features may erupt simultaneously or be suppressed, patterns that reflect the underground connections between them, the shared plumbing that links features at the surface. Studying these interactions provides insights into the hydrothermal system's structure, revealing which features share reservoirs or conduits, how pressure and water flow are distributed underground. Beehive Geyser, named for its distinctive cone that resembles an old-fashioned beehive, is unpredictable, erupting anywhere from 1 to several times per day or going dormant for weeks. When it does erupt, Beehive is spectacular, sending a narrow column of water up to 200 feet high, the eruption lasting about 5 minutes, accompanied by a roar that can be heard across the basin. Beehive has an indicator, a smaller nearby feature that erupts 15 to 30 minutes before Beehive itself, providing a warning that allows visitors to gather. Watching Beehive erupt is worth the wait, the power and height of the eruption making it one of the most impressive sights in Yellowstone. Riverside Geyser, as its name suggests, sits beside the Firehole River, its eruptions arcing gracefully over the water. Riverside is one of the most regular geysers after Old Faithful, erupting every 6 to 7 hours with remarkable consistency. The eruptions last about 20 minutes, the column reaching about 75 feet high, but angled, creating a rainbow effect when the sun is properly positioned. The setting, with the river and forest and the graceful arc of the eruption, makes Riverside one of the most photogenic geysers, a favorite subject for photographers seeking to capture Yellowstone's beauty. Morning Glory Pool, at the far end of the Upper Geyser Basin Trail, is a hot spring rather than a geyser, a deep pool with a distinctive shape resembling the morning glory flower. The pool was once a brilliant blue,
its color resulting from the depth and clarity of the water. But over decades, visitors threw coins, rocks, and trash into the pool, the debris partially blocking the underground vents, reducing water circulation, lowering the temperature, and allowing different thermophiles to colonize the cooler margins. The color changed from pure blue to a mix of blue, green, and yellow, still beautiful, but different from its original state. Morning Glory Pool is often cited as an example of how human impacts, even seemingly minor ones like throwing coins, can alter thermal features, changing their appearance and ecology. The trail through the Upper Geyser Basin is about 3 miles round trip from Old Faithful to Morning Glory Pool and back, with side trails leading to other features. Walking this trail provides a comprehensive tour of geyser types and behaviors, a chance to see the variety of forms that geothermal energy can take. Some geysers are cone type, erupting from raised sinter cones like Old Faithful and Castle. Others are fountain type, erupting from pools, sending water in all directions like Fountain Geyser in the nearby Fountain Pine Pots area. Some erupt from small holes barely visible in the center, others from large craters or complex systems of connected vents. The boardwalks that make this tour possible are themselves remarkable engineering, designed to protect both visitors and thermal features. The boards are elevated to prevent heat damage, to avoid crushing fragile sinter formations, to provide a safe path across ground that can be unstable or dangerously hot. The boardwalks snake through the basin, taking carefully planned routes that minimize environmental impact while providing access to major features. Building and maintaining these boardwalks is a constant challenge, as the wood must withstand temperature extremes, moisture, and millions of footsteps each year. The rules for visitors in thermal areas are strict and enforced rigorously. Staying on boardwalks is mandatory, not just for safety, but for preservation. The sinter formations are fragile, easily damaged by footsteps, taking decades or centuries to rebuild. The microbial mats are easily destroyed, the careful balance of species disrupted by disturbance. And the danger is real. The water in most thermal features is hot enough to cause severe burns or death. The ground can be thin crust over boiling water or steam vents, and people who have left boardwalks have been injured or killed. Signs throughout thermal areas warn visitors, and rangers patrol regularly, educating visitors about the importance of staying on trails. Despite these rules, impacts occur. Vandalism has damaged features, with people deliberately breaking sinter formations or throwing objects into pools. Accidental damage happens when visitors get too close to photograph or when children stray from the boardwalk. The park works constantly to educate visitors, to make clear that Yellowstone's thermal features are both precious and fragile, that enjoying them requires respecting them, that preservation is everyone's responsibility. The Upper Geyser Basin changes with the seasons. Summer brings the largest crowds, the boardwalks busy with thousands of visitors daily. The features are at their most visible, steam production lower in the warmer air, colors vivid in the bright sunlight. Winter transforms the basin, snow covering the ground between features, steam production dramatic in the cold air, and bison and other wildlife using the area for warmth. The boardwalks are still accessible, though snow and ice can make walking more challenging, and the experience is quieter, more contemplative, with far fewer visitors braving the cold. Spring and fall are transitional, the weather variable, the visitor numbers moderate. These seasons offer perhaps the best conditions for experiencing the Upper Geyser Basin, with comfortable temperatures, fewer crowds, and lighting that is optimal for photography. Wildlife is more visible during these times, moving through the basin, using thermal areas as part of their seasonal patterns. The features themselves may behave differently depending on water input from snowmelt or autumn rains, their intervals sometimes shorter or longer, their eruptions stronger or weaker in response to changes in the underground system. Walking through the Upper Geyser Basin, experiencing the variety of features, watching eruptions, and observing the quiet intervals, you gain an appreciation for the complexity of Yellowstone's hydrothermal system. This is not a simple landscape, but a dynamic, interconnected network where each feature is linked to others, where changes in one can affect many, where the balance between water input, heat, pressure, and geology creates the patterns we observe. Understanding this complexity is part of what makes Yellowstone fascinating, part of what draws researchers and enthusiasts back again and again, always finding something new, always learning more about how this extraordinary place works.
Yellowstone is not just a place of visual spectacle, not merely a collection of beautiful or impressive features to photograph and move on from. It is a living laboratory, a natural experiment in extreme biology, a place where scientific discoveries have been made that have had profound impacts far beyond the park, affecting medicine, industry, and our understanding of life itself. The geothermal features that draw tourists by the millions are also attracting scientists from around the world, researchers seeking to understand extremophiles, to discover new enzymes and biochemicals, to learn how life adapts to conditions that would seem impossible. The most famous scientific discovery from Yellowstone is probably Taq polymerase, an enzyme derived from Thermus aquaticus, the bacterium discovered by Thomas Brock in the hot springs of Yellowstone in the 1960s. Taq polymerase revolutionized molecular biology by enabling the polymerase chain reaction, or PCR, a technique for amplifying DNA that has become fundamental to countless applications. PCR is used in medical diagnostics, in forensic science, in genetic research, in paternity testing, in archaeology, in environmental monitoring, essentially anywhere DNA needs to be analyzed. What makes Taq polymerase valuable is that it remains stable and functional at high temperatures, temperatures that would denature enzymes from normal organisms. PCR requires repeated cycles of heating to separate DNA strands and cooling to allow replication. Enzymes from typical organisms cannot survive these temperature cycles, but Taq polymerase, evolved to function in the hot springs of Yellowstone, thrives at these temperatures. The discovery and development of Taq polymerase has generated billions of dollars in economic activity and has been cited in numerous Nobel Prize-winning research projects. But Taq polymerase is just one example among many. Yellowstone's thermal features harbor thousands of species of thermophilic microorganisms, most of them unstudied, many of them undiscovered. Each of these organisms has evolved unique adaptations to survive at high temperatures, unique enzymes and proteins and biochemical pathways that allow them to function where normal life cannot. These adaptations are of immense interest to biotechnology because enzymes that function at high temperatures are valuable in industrial processes, in research applications, in medicine. Researchers continue to sample Yellowstone's thermal features, collecting microorganisms, growing them in culture, analyzing their genomes, studying their biochemistry. This work is regulated by the National Park Service, which requires permits for scientific collection and which has established agreements with researchers to ensure that any commercial benefits derived from discoveries are shared with the park and used to support further research and conservation. The goal is to allow scientific investigation while protecting the features and ensuring that the public, which owns these national park resources, benefits from discoveries made from them. The astrobiology implications are equally significant. If life can exist at temperatures near boiling, in acidic or alkaline waters, in the presence of toxic chemicals like arsenic and sulfur compounds, then the range of environments in the solar system that might harbor life expands considerably. Europa, Jupiter's moon with a subsurface ocean, becomes more interesting. Enceladus, Saturn's moon that vents water vapor into space from an underground ocean, becomes more plausible as a habitat. Even Mars, with its subsurface brines and possible hydrothermal systems in its past, cannot be ruled out as having once supported or even still supporting microbial life. Yellowstone's extremophiles show us that life is more adaptable than we once thought, that the universe might be more alive than we dared to hope. Research in Yellowstone is not limited to microbiology. Geologists study the hydrothermal system, trying to understand how water and heat flow underground, how minerals precipitate,
how the system responds to earthquakes and climate variations. Ecologists study how thermal features affect wildlife, how animals use the warmth and open water, how plants adapt to thermal gradients. Climate scientists use long-term records of thermal features to understand how climate has varied, how precipitation changes affect groundwater, how ecosystems respond to environmental shifts. The park has become a global center for geothermal research, hosting scientists from dozens of countries, facilitating studies that would be impossible elsewhere. The concentration of thermal features, the diversity of conditions, the ease of access, and the protection afforded by national park status all make Yellowstone an ideal location for this research. The knowledge gained here is applied worldwide, informing our understanding of geothermal systems, improving our ability to develop geothermal energy, enhancing our capacity to predict volcanic activity, expanding our knowledge of life's limits and possibilities. Educational programs in Yellowstone introduce students to geothermal science, to microbiology, to ecology. Rangers give talks explaining the features, their formation, their biology. Visitor centers have exhibits with microscopes showing thermophiles, displays explaining geyser mechanics, films about the supervolcano. Books and scientific papers proliferate, sharing knowledge with the public and the research community. Yellowstone has become not just a park, but a classroom, a place where people of all ages learn about Earth processes, about life in extreme environments, about conservation and the value of preserving natural systems. The economic value of this scientific work is difficult to quantify, but is certainly substantial. Taq polymerase alone has generated billions in revenue. Other enzymes and biochemicals discovered in Yellowstone have contributed to research and industry. The training of scientists, the inspiration of students, the advancement of knowledge, all have value that extends far beyond monetary measures. Yellowstone contributes to human society not just through tourism, but through science, providing resources and insights that improve lives and expand understanding. As you walk through the thermal basins, you are walking through a living laboratory, a place where every feature is not just a spectacle, but a scientific resource, a potential source of discoveries, a classroom without walls. The steaming pools and erupting geysers are teaching us about life, about Earth, about the universe. They are showing us possibilities we had not imagined, challenging assumptions we thought were solid, revealing connections between disparate fields of knowledge. This is the intellectual gift of Yellowstone, as valuable as its beauty, as important as its wildlife, as worthy of protection as any aspect of this remarkable place.